Greatness. Greatness. Bow, bow, bow. Greatness.
Yo, welcome to the Renewing the Mind podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Sanchez. Joined with me is my best friend, my roommate, my partner in crime, my hero, my idol,
role model,
the person who got me in a lot of trouble, Garet Arnold. What's up, Garet?
Happy to be on the show. I'm excited.
Glad to be here.
I'm excited. I'm real happy to be here, but I'm the person who tried to keep you out of trouble.
Not true. Do you have a ring? Do you have a championship ring or something you wear that you can kiss and say a cheesy saying, or no?
No.
Okay. All right.
Dr. Sanchez got that, huh?
Yeah, that's usually how he does it. Something ridiculous and weird. On this podcast, we teach you how to renew your perspective, move to certainty, find what's awesome about that in every situation, and never forget it. There's 2 times to be great: when you feel like it and when you don't. Today, we are talking about what youth pastors see and what parents should know. If you didn't hear me, it is clearly right there on the screen, right here and right here. So if you're watching on YouTube live or the playback, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell. If you're watching us on Facebook, you can give that a thumbs up or hover over that, give us a little heart, and maybe share it to someone that has a teenager, works with teens, is a parent of a teen, anything like that. If you're here, let us know you're here. You can see the little ticker going down at the bottom of the video that says hop into the comments. We want to know your thoughts and your questions. As always, this is not just us communicating to you, but we want you also to be a part of this. So we got the Smiths are here, my in-laws, always supporting from Rockford, Illinois. We got the man, Josh Ruby, the man, the myth, and the legend from Wisconsin. Alicia said it's Gary. That's our nickname for Garet. Is good old Gary. Rochelle, hit us with the let's go. We're excited. So what we're wanting to do, first of all, I just want to start off. Garet, born and raised in Maryville, Missouri.
Right.
I don't know. Were you actually born there?
Yep.
Okay. Outside of Kansas City, then went to Evangel University, where I met this joker on the basketball court. He's wearing some John Stockton shorts before John Stockton shorts were cool.
I'm a trendsetter. Tell me that's not the style now.
Yeah, now. Yeah, that's it. Some cotton.
I'm ahead of it.
Some cotton shorts, and became friends there, and then just kind of kept progressing. I ended up getting kicked out of a dorm, ended up getting moved onto the same floor as Garet, and kind of went through college the last 3 years together. And then after my second senior year, and and Garet's first year at seminary, we lived together in the apartment. And then since then, been in each other's officiating you and Emma's wedding. You were in my wedding, and Garet's got 2 boys, twins.
Yep.
And
just turned a year.
And Garet hasn't slept one night solid since then.
Honestly,
not one.
I bet, like, realistically, me and my wife, and we were talking about this the other day. Realistically, in the past 390 days or whatever, 380 days or something, I bet that both boys have slept through the night till 6 a.m. 10, maybe 12 times.
So this man's running on a white energy, white monsters.
That's right.
Caffeine.
Yeah.
So, Garet, what was your major in college?
I majored in biblical studies with a minor in business management. I actually started with business, discovered that I hated that. And then once I really felt the call to ministry, I switched over to biblical studies coming out of my sophomore year.
Yeah, me and Garet have a lot in common. So I went to school as a business. I loved it. But then I felt God called me to be a pastor. And when I went to my advisor, he was like, dude, that's a horrible idea. He's like, your theology classes GPA is like a 1.5. He's like, your business GPA is like a 3.2. He's like, I think you should stay in business. I'm like, well, you can tell God that. Went to seminary. What was your master's in?
Intercultural ministry, so like missions.
Okay. And then talk briefly, graduated seminary, and what'd you do?
Yeah, so I graduated from seminary, and pretty much straight out of seminary, a few months after that, I got a job offer to go back home to my hometown church and do like a paid internship for 1 year. And so I didn't have any other options, and so I reluctantly went back to Maryville, and I'd always said that I would never go back.
Right.
Because I grew up there my whole life, and it's a small town, and I just had enough. And so I went back and did a 1 year internship. At the end of my internship, my sister, I got an older sister. She's 5 years older than me. She at the time she was 30 and I was 25, I think. And she had found herself in the position of being a single mom. And so I'm really close to all my family, but I'm really close to my sister. And so I decided that I was going to move down to Kansas City to live with her, and just, try to help her and support her through the last couple months of her pregnancy, and help her, my newborn nephew, whenever he finally came. And so I moved down there in the summer, and she was, I don't know, 7 or 8 months pregnant. And then she gave birth or whatever. And I lived with her and my nephew for like the first 3.5 years of his life in Kansas City. And because I moved there without really a plan to actually, I didn't have a desire specifically to go to Kansas City.
You said that a lot in your life, huh? I did that without a plan. I wasn't thinking.
I got it tattooed on me. No plans. And so I moved down there, and the church that we were attending at the time, I got hooked up with a church that I found that was meeting downtown Kansas City on the plaza through a girl that I went to evangel with. And she said, hey, you should come check out this church. And so me and my sister went down and checked it out. And at the time it was called The Cause. Now today it's called Hillsong Kansas City. And so I show up, and on our very first Sunday there, they were meeting in the theater on the plaza. And he says, our church has just purchased a building on the plaza that we're going to turn into our church home so that we can get out of this theater and we'll have a permanent location. But because it was a very young church, the church was about 400 people at that time, but it was very young, so they didn't have a lot of money. He said, we want to use a lot of volunteer labor. And so if you know anything about construction, we want to invite you to come down and help out during the days. And I didn't know anything about construction, but I
just showed up.
Yeah, I was like, until I get a job, I'm going to make some, good use of my time. And so I started going down every single day and just volunteering, doing whatever I could.
Yep.
Ended up being a lot of sanding.
And that's why you're coughing. The sand's still stuck in your throat to this day. I went to visit you. That's where I stole that saying, until Jesus runs this city. When in their lobby, they had that plastered all over all over that vinyl wall with all those crosses. And I was like, dude, I'm stealing that forever. And that's been my saying since we got to Sioux City, is until Jesus runs this city.
Yeah. So I started doing that, and I showed up like every day for like 3 months. And
for a volunteer.
Yeah, just volunteering my time.
Yep.
And doing whatever I could to help out. And one day the pastor, his name's Kyle Turner, he said, hey, he's like, you're really consistent, and that's what I need. And so I'm going to start paying you to work on the building full time. And so the guy who's kind of the general contractor on the job, his name was Nick Brown. He kind of took me under his wing, and and I we worked on the church building for about another year, and then Nick kept me on as his employee, and then I did construction for about another 2 years in Kansas City after that, 2.5 years. And it was a very, very, very long season.
Yeah. I remember talking to you in that season. You're just basically in a season of waiting. But I mean, I think and I haven't talked to you about this, but I think it taught you a lot about servant, and I think you can see now volunteers in the church through a different lens because you were that for so long. Then you went to Maryville back to Maryville for how long?
Yeah, so I went back to, so then I'm working in Kansas City, and out of the blue one day, I'm at a construction job site one day, and I get a call from the pastor of my hometown church, and he says, hey, he says, I want you to come back to work at the bridge, and I really did not want to do that
For the second time.
Yeah, and as much as I hated doing construction, and there's nothing wrong with construction, it just wasn't what I was called to.
Yep.
And it definitely wasn't what I was gifted at. I probably did more damage than good doing construction, but he asked me, and so I prayed about it for a few weeks, and I just, I felt like God was telling me to go back. And so kind of begrudgingly and reluctantly, I went back to Maryville, and I remember I told my sister one day, I said, well, because I'm single at the time, and, I had been praying and hoping for a wife for years.
I mean, at this point, you were what? You were like 41?
Yeah. And I was about 30. Yeah, I was 30. And I thought, well, I thought I would find my wife here in Kansas City because it's like it's a big city. There's a lot of women to choose from. And so I remember I told my sister, I said, well, I'm going to go back to Maryville, and I said, I'm going to put finding a wife on hold. I said, because she ain't going to be in Maryville.
Right.
And she was like, she reprimanded me, and she was like, don't put a limit on God. She's like, you shouldn't do that. Of all people, she's like, better. Don't limit God.
Go, Jamie.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, yeah, okay.
Right.
And because like Maryville is a small town. I know who lives there. I know the options there, and there's a university there, but Northwest wasn't known for having, beautiful Christian women.
Yeah. Evangel was, and you struck out there. So, so you meet Emma. Yeah, you meet Emma, your wife now, and you're there for a little bit, and then how you moved to Kansas City, youth pastor currently now. How long you been in Kansas City at that position?
A little over 2.5 years now.
Okay. Yeah, so we've seen it all. I've been in full-time ministry, for those of you who don't know, for 10.5 years. June will be 11, all in youth ministry. Was at Montezuma for almost 4 years, and we've been here for close to 6.5. So what we want to do tonight is just talk about what we've seen as youth pastors, what we're hearing from the students in our youth group, the struggles, the exciting thing, just kind of talk candidly about that, and then our advice to parents or teachers or coaches or someone who's got a cousin that's a youth in youth. And we're defining youth as 6th through 12th grade. And by no means have I ever been the parent of a youth age child. Neither has Garrett. And so we're not speaking from a place of like, this is what you should do and this is what works. We're just saying what we've seen in our youth group, and then what we've seen work when we're talking to students. So I don't want you to write us off because Garrett's got, 12-month-old twin boys, and I got a 6'3" and a 3-month-old. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't know, but I do know what it means to be a youth pastor. And I do know some of the conversations we've had before and after service, at conventions, at the altar, through text message. And I think we could bring a little bit of insight to what that maybe looks like. So a couple things I want to read before we go any further is some statistics. And if you're on Instagram, this is one of my favorite channels to hear the statistics and kind of get a pulse for the youth of today. It's called Feed Youth Ministry. You can also go, that's their Instagram handle, Feed Youth Ministry. You can also go to feed.bible. And there's insights, there's resources, there's books, there's blogs. I mean, it's a great great Instagram page and or website. But here's a couple statistics that I saw. Young teens ages 13 to 15 are struggling more with the idea of suicide than any other group, quoted from Global Youth Culture. That's 13 to 15. And when you think about a 13 to 15-year-old, we think maybe they haven't really gone through some things, but I think their mental stability is probably as fragile as any. Do you see that in your youth group?
Yeah. I mean, for sure, one of the things that I really admire about the younger generations is that I feel like they've done a really good job to remove the stigma around mental health. And
Yep.
it's not as taboo anymore to, see a counselor or see a therapist and get help.
Yep.
But strangely enough, I almost feel like I have seen within even my own youth group that they're very quick to embrace kind of the tag of anxiety, and it's like it's almost kind of like the thing to do is to say I have anxiety or I struggle with depression, and it's almost like a fad. But I know that some of it's very genuine, it's very real, and they're struggling with things. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely seeing it a lot.
Yep. Here's along those same lines. 2 out of 3 U.S. teens battle depression, and 1 out of 3 U.S. teens battle suicidal thoughts on a regular basis.
That's
So 40.
crazy.
So the first statistic was 13 to 15-year-olds struggle with it the most, and then out of that, it says 1 out of 3 wrestle with suicidal thoughts, and 2 out of 3 wrestle with depression. Those are just some quick statistics. I know that's we've talked about that on the podcast multiple times, that people are so quick to say, "Oh yeah, I have depression." It's like then they kind of like surrounded and like kind of lifted up, and it's like, instead of, I always try to tell my students, regardless if you feel that way, don't proclaim that over your life. They tell alcoholics to not call yourself an alcoholic. It's the same thing I try to get students to feel, is like, don't continue to say I have depression or I am depressed. It's like, man, your words have power, and stop calling you and labeling you something and giving a foothold to Satan to say, okay, cool, yeah, now you are depressed, or you are gonna battle anxiety the rest of your life. Before we go any further, any questions, comments along those lines of anything about mental health and students or suicidal thoughts, throw them in the comments, and we'll go to there. Me and Garrett both came with some things that are encouraging to see. And then things we struggle with, and things that we are kind of make us a little scared about. I put the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start with the bad things that you're seeing, Garrett, or the tough things or the struggles that you're seeing, in your students.
I would say that one of the big struggles that I'm seeing amongst not just my students, but the youth of today, specifically youth that would call themselves Christians, is this pressure to conform to society's new norms and standards, and kind of adopt this progressive Christianity theology and ideology. And I'm not, I won't necessarily get into a bunch of specifics of what that means, but progressive Christianity is just the new emergent church, and they've just rebranded, and it's it's dangerous. And I've seen, I've had youth who left our youth group because they had very progressive ideas of Christianity, and I didn't teach that, and I wouldn't preach that, and in fact I kind of preached the opposite of that, and they didn't like it, so they left. And I just think there's a tremendous amount of pressure from culture to conform to that.
I'm just jotting some of those notes down. Yeah, the couple things I wrote down are literally the exact same. I wrote down this idea of cancel culture, this
Yeah.
idea that you can't think differently than anyone else,
Hmm.
and if you do think different than someone else, you hate them.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like I it's like I can't have a different opinion, and if I do, then you hate me or I hate that group or those people. And then
Hmm.
lastly, which you just said, is truth is relevant. And this idea that they think truth is relevant to whatever I think, and it can ebb and flow, and it's different for where I was born and who I was raised by, and all these different things. And the reality is, we don't believe any of that. I mean, I know you well enough to know you preach biblical truth, and we teach and preach that the Bible is the authoritative word on everything, and if
Yeah.
it's against the Bible, we don't stand for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the toughest part. Is like, I get like you said, I'm not going to go into details, but the questions that we get as pastors. If I'm doing this, am I going to hell? If I'm this way, am I going to hell? If my friend believes this, are they going to hell? And it's like, that's all they want to know. They want me to be super black and white, one way or the other. And as soon as I say one thing that they don't agree with, it's like, well, you hate me, and then it's just over. It's
Yeah.
it's tough.
Well, there's a complete redefining of words and ideas, and so it's like,
Yep.
there's a redefining of what gender is. There's a redefining of what marriage is, and
Hmm.
probably the biggest one that I see is culture has tried to redefine what love actually is,
Yep.
and now it's like they say, well, love pretty much equates to acceptance.
Yep.
And if you love somebody, then you're going to accept everything about them.
Yep.
And so it's like culture has really tried to redefine what things mean. And some people in the church, some entire denominations are going along with it and saying, yep, we'll adopt
Yeah.
that.
Yep. Yeah, that's a tough thing too, because I don't know if you ran into this, but I've ran into this where they come in and they're like, my friend's here for the first time. I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. Do you love? Yeah, I'm a Christian. Cool. And then they have like all of these wild beliefs, and I'm like, dude, that's like, not to put Christianity in a box, but if you are a follower of Jesus, there just are some non-negotiables that I believe that define your biblical truth and what you stand for. And if you're against that, and you're also telling me that you love Jesus, that's really hard, because now I'm having to backtrack and go and do damage control to the person, that is a part of my youth group. And they're like, well, this kid says he loves Jesus and he believes all of these other things, and he's showing them scriptures, or she's showing scriptures to even back it up. And I'm like, well, those scriptures are pulled out of context. And I was like, man, it just kind of keeps snowballing down this path.
Yeah, I mean, and so I think you said something very, very crucial, and something that I'm a Christian. I consider myself a Christian, but I don't even like to use that word anymore,
I agree.
because you can define and redefine the word Christian until it fits what you want it to fit. And so
Right.
I say, are you a follower of Jesus? Because that's pretty black and white. Like, you
Right.
either follow him, you follow his teachings, or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people with Christianity, they make it fit into their mold, and they can kind of redefine it and tweak it until it fits
Yeah.
something that they're comfortable with.
Well, if you chase back, the word Christian came out like way after Jesus' time. That they used to be
Yeah.
known as the people that followed the way.
Yeah.
And when you actually think about what that means, there is a one way, and you either are a follower of the way or you're not a follower of the way. And when you define it that way, that's a whole different ball game than just saying a blanket statement of, yeah, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
A couple comments here. Your wife, that's a good idea, encouraging them not to proclaim that over their lives. That was when we were talking about depression and anxiety. Eric Johnson, my man, Montezuma, he says you hit it on the head, man, telling kids they are more than depression and anxiety, and help their mental side of the issue and show them how to overcome those thoughts. Hashtag renewing your mind. And then Esther, postmodernism, progressive relativism. Yep, that's what we're talking about. This idea of thoughts and ideas can be anything or what you think they are, not biblical truth. Any other things you're seeing that struggles? Is that kind of that's the main one?
I would say that's the really, really, really big one.
Yep.
Also, I think that there's, you know, the youth of today, they live in a society that's changing at a faster pace than history ever has before, and so
Yep.
they're experiencing things that we didn't experience, and they have things at their fingertips that we didn't have at our fingertips,
Yep.
and so the challenges that they experience are unique to this generation, and our kids' generation are going to have even more unique challenges.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that I heard Chris Hodges. He's the pastor of Church of the Highlands down in Birmingham,
Yep.
and he was speaking at a conference, and he was just talking about how, in his time, whenever he grew up, he's like he just said, it was significantly easier whenever I grew up than it is today.
100%.
So they have unique challenges that they're going through.
I've said this more times. I've said this often, that if we think as adults how we feel the uncertainty of what this next season is going to bring. I mean, when the pandemic hit, everyone's like, "Oh, it's a couple weeks. Oh, it's a couple months. Oh, it's 6 months. Oh, it's just the year. Oh, it's 8 months. Now it's a whole year. Well, now it's 2021. No, now it's 2022." It's like, I feel that as an
14
adult.
days.
Yeah, yeah.
14 days to flatten the curve.
Yeah, yeah. It's like what it's so uncertain to what the next season looks like. And now you have to feel that as a 12-year-old or as a 13-year-old or as a 17-year-old. And it's like, dude, I feel that as an adult, let alone a 13-year-old going through some of the things where your hormones are changing. And middle school and high school sucked in regards to getting made fun of. I mean, if you didn't have the right pants, hoodie, jacket, and now you got social media on top of that. I mean, one of the other main things that I just wanted to hit on real quick is this hypersexual society. I think that's a huge one I hear all the time. And when you think about even a platform that started off as innocent as TikTok, now all the dances that they do are over sexualized. I mean, everything is just thrown in your face. I mean, we don't have to hound on that too much. If you live in society and have your eyes open to any sort of media on any level, even TV, like we can't even watch daytime or nighttime TV almost with Stella, or even the commercials are crazy.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then I think you said, they all have the power to do crazy things at their fingertips with phones.
Yeah.
The days of, finding a magazine to look at something you shouldn't is long gone. It can be as early as anyone who has a phone can look at something with 2 clicks of their thumb to find something they shouldn't. All right, enough of the bad. Let's talk about what's exciting. What are you seeing? What keeps you going? What are you passionate about? What are you excited about?
I would say that probably one of the most significant things that stands out to me about the younger generation, the next generation, is that from my observation, this is just me, this is just my observation, my students are way more willing to share their faith than I was at that age. Whenever I was in high school, I called myself a Christian. But I wasn't really necessarily even living that lifestyle, and I certainly wasn't like vocal about it. I mean, I wasn't sharing my faith. I wasn't vocal about it.
You weren't standing up in the lunchroom and telling kids about Jesus?
No, I
Dude.
wouldn't. And
wow,
I got kids in my youth group who, they're so bold and just shameless about sharing their faith. And their presentation is pretty rocky, and they need some help on their presentation and kind of
y'all gonna die.
Yeah. Hey, do you know Jesus? And it's like, whoa, like slow down, like, do you know this person?
Right.
But they're very, in my observation, they've been very bold with their faith, and so that's really, really encouraging to me, because I think that that's what we're going to need more of in the future. Definitely not less of it. We're going to need more of that.
Yep.
And I'm super passionate about the next generation, because like that's who we're leaving it to. And now that I have kids, like my passion for the younger generations and the next generation has skyrocketed 1,000%.
Yep.
It's like I think about it every day, and I'm excited about it.
Yep. Sweet. The big, I mean, there's a lot of things I'm excited about. The one point I wrote down is that they like real over fake. I
Hmm.
think, I told someone this the other day that this generation can spot fake better than I think any generation before them. And,
Yeah,
I think that they went authentic, they went genuine. Like I always tell my youth leaders, dude, don't try to fake that you know anything because they'll know
yeah,
immediately. Don't be like, oh, did you get a touchdown in Fortnite? Like they're like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like,
yeah.
what guns are
But
you like? You play on the PS Xbox 5? Like, don't do that. Don't
yeah,
they can spot that. They'd much rather have you say like, "Hey, are you playing a Nintendo?" Or like, "Are you playing Atari?" Like that to them is more genuine than someone trying to be fake. And I that goes into they can spot fake when it comes to religion, then they can spot
hmm,
fake when it comes to people who are hypocritical, they can spot fake when it comes to people who say, "Yeah, I'm a follower of Jesus," but then actually live a different lifestyle.
yeah,
And then they always question, well, Tyler, if this is really what it means to be a follower of Jesus, then what do our actions look like? It's like it's so much deeper than just like something that their parents did or something that society has told them to do, because statistically once every 6 weeks is an average attendee, a church attendee. So we're
mm,
not in the culture anymore of every family, regardless if they're actually following Jesus or not, go to church Sunday, Wednesday. you
yeah,
know, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, pretty much every one of my friends went to youth group. It was just kind of what their families did,
yeah,
or were open to it, or today the kids that show up are the kids that actually want to come or are searching for some sort of truth.
yeah. Well, and like to the point about authenticity, and I'm willing to bet that it was the same for you, and you can speak to this, but whenever I grew up in church, um, there wasn't a lot of authenticity. There was this pressure that you had to have it all together, and so you never heard preachers who are vulnerable and talked about their shortcomings and talked about times they messed up and they didn't. It was
Yep.
what you got from the preacher was is that they did everything right
Yep.
and they were the standard and you needed to try to live up to that, and so everybody kind of took on that mindset, and it was like everybody in the church, they would put on their Sunday best and
Yep.
try to act like they didn't just have a fight the day before in their family, or
Right.
they didn't have any problems in their family or with their marriage or their kids,
Yep.
and I think that today that with preachers is that you're seeing that the preachers that really connect with the next generation are the ones who are willing to be vulnerable
Yep.
and be real and authentic.
Yeah. I remember very vividly. I can't remember. I think it was like freshman year, maybe 10th grade. We were sitting in a small group with like eight guys, which I knew like 7 of them really well.
Yeah.
And we had the conversation of pornography. And and so he's our leader's talking about pornography, and I know without a shadow of a doubt we've had conversations that all of us, the 7 that I know, have struggled with that. So he's talking about it and he's like, raise your hand if anyone struggled with pornography. None of us raise our hand, we just sit there. He's like, that's
Yeah.
awesome. He's like, that's so good, you guys are like, in my head I'm like, I know we all do. So
Yeah.
he keeps going around about, that's so great, well, if you guys ever do. Finally I was like, dude, we all do. And they're like, no, I don't. Why would you ever say that? I was like, bro, we just talked about and I called us all out, including myself. And I just remember that being a very vivid moment in my life that like, why can't I come to church and tell them, hey, I'm struggling?
Yeah.
Like if there's one place you should be able to do that, it has to be church, right?
Yeah.
And so then
Well,
we've tried to really make that a emphasis in our youth group that I, I want you to tell me or feel comfortable to tell someone what you're struggling with. And it wasn't like I'm gonna be like, oh, Gary, that's awesome. Have a porn addiction, It's like,
yeah.
oh, dude, that's thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty. God still loves you in the midst of your pain, but we gotta turn away from that. You know,
Yeah.
God has a better
Right.
calling in life for you.
Yeah. And I, for me personally, I I held on to that pressure to uphold an image for like way too long. And it, even through college and seminary, I felt like I can't let anybody know about my struggles. I can't let anybody know about the areas that I, fall short. And then whenever I finally did, there's so much freedom in it.
Yeah.
And but I think that you're right that we don't want to just normalize it and act like, oh well, you're struggling with that. Well, yeah, I mean everybody is. It's okay.
Right.
I mean, I think that we want to show grace, but we also want to like challenge them, towards repentance,
Yep.
and to following Jesus.
Yep. All right. Let's move to the next one. You got any advice for parents, coaches, teachers, other youth leaders? We got another youth pastor and some youth leaders in the chat. By no means are we experts. Just our opinion, and you can't go wrong from getting multiple people's opinion. So, any advice to those people, Garrett?
Yeah. I think the number one for parents, I would say, and my kids aren't older yet, and so I don't know what it's like to be in that position, but don't be naive. You always want to believe the best in your kids, and you want to believe that they wouldn't do something or they wouldn't struggle with something.
Yeah.
But that was like my parents, and
I knew you were gonna say that.
I was able to pull the wool over their eyes a little bit, and I had great parents. I feel like I had the best parents in the world.
False. I have the best parents in the world.
But they were deceived a little bit.
So here's a question, just personally: do you think they knew or had an idea, or they really had no idea that you were sneaking out of the house and doing the things you were doing? Swimming in the city pool and climbing the fence, whatever, just hypothetical things that you did, maybe. It's just, I didn't say they're real things. I was like, I was giving, analogies, scenarios, hypothetically.
Yeah. Throwing eggs.
Yeah.
I don't think they knew.
Yeah. Because I came back I had the moment with parents when I finally gave my life to Jesus for the 5th and final real time. And I sat down and said, hey, here's everything I've done. And some of the things they were blindsided by, and some of the things they were like, yeah, we knew. We kind of let you struggle and find out, truth for yourself and make some mistakes and come back to it. They by no means knew I was going to drink at a house and let me. They stopped me, but they knew that I was going to try to lie and try to get around it. They knew I wasn't perfect or try to live that life.
Yeah.
Okay. So parents don't be naive.
Yeah. And talk to your kids. And I know that a lot of times that it's, my parents tried to talk to me, and I give the one word answers. It's kind of like, fine. Yeah.
One of the things,
no.
One other thing before you go to your second one, about being naive, to me, it's, assume your kid will mess up or make mistakes. Like if a parent can assume your kid's going to sin and do something they're not supposed to, the question is how far down that path are they going to go? And that to me is the parent's job, is to stop it. It's from going crazy, right? Like every kid is going to try to go to a party. It's how many parties they're going to go to, and are they going to do hard heroin and cocaine at the party, right? That's the job of the parent, is to catch those little things and then punish in love, and hopefully they don't continue down those paths to make the mistakes. But okay, go to your next one.
Well, and I talk to your kids early, and talk to them about the uncomfortable things early, because they're being exposed to it way earlier than you think that they are. But we this is for parents, youth pastors, this is for everybody. We had a guy come to our church right at the end of the year, this last year, and his name was Russ Tuttle, and he's from an organization called StopTraffickingProject.org. And he had a person come and speak to our Wednesday night youth group. They had a person that spoke upstairs to our Wednesday night adult group, and then he came and spoke to our Thursday night group. But they come and they do these, they do a presentation, and then they do a survey at the end, and they hand out a survey to all the students, and it's anonymous. They don't have to put their name on it or anything. so that they can, have the freedom to be honest. And he sends us back the results of the survey, and some of the stuff on there was like shockingly scary to me. I think we had 32 kids that night, high schoolers, that filled out the survey, and or no, it was between 6th to 12th grade. I think 32 of them filled it out, and of the 32, he was talking about sex trafficking, and of the 32 that filled it out, 3 of them said that they had met a stranger before.
Whoa.
That they went up and that they met up with a stranger that they met online.
Wow.
And we don't know, I have no idea who it was.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's crazy to me.
Yep.
Like, they're being groomed online, and they're, you see this stuff, and you just, you think that it's never going to touch you, or that it's never going to come close to you. And, you think that it happens, in more, you don't think that it's going to happen in your little, small conservative church.
Yep.
And so it's like, be aware that, like, online, that your kids are getting onto stuff, and you need to track where they're going, what they're doing.
Yep.
And have conversations with them and talk to them about this stuff, and let them know about the dangers that are out there.
Yep.
I mean, it was just, that's crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff. So don't be naive, and talk to them.
Yeah.
Bring up the tough things. I got 2 as well. One of them was allow a place, and we've talked about this on the podcast a lot. Create create an atmosphere where asking questions and doubting are almost praised, not shunned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, allow them to feel comfortable. And sometimes as a parent, that's saying like, dude, Garrett, is there anything you want to ask me that you think I'd maybe get mad about?
Yeah.
Like, be funny, set a timer, 30 minutes. You can ask me anything, and I won't hold it against you, And then as a parent, you go in the other room afterwards and you're like, oh dude, my kid's asking, but you give them an opportunity to doubt. So it goes back to like, being this perfect person in youth group and in church. I never grew up thinking I could doubt my faith. I always grew up thinking that if I said, dude, is God actually real? Yeah. There's no way I could have ever said that.
Right.
So making a place where you can doubt, where you can comfortable to talk about those things, to there's this generation, it kind of goes back to my real and fake thing. Because I said so, or because it is, just doesn't work anymore. They want to know why and how. They want references. They want proof. So giving them the ability to search and find truth in the moment, in the confines of your house. I follow a guy called Manny Arango, and he's my dude. He's a theologian. He's a genius. But he said the other day that when the first person to tell a student something, a piece of information on a topic, becomes their expert in their head. Whoa. And everything after that is bounced off of that idea board that was created for the first thought. So if you say something like, orange soda always makes me throw up or something, right? Yeah. So now the rest of my life, I'm bouncing the idea off of, because you were the first person to bring that idea up, I'm always trying to either prove that or disprove that one idea or thought about orange soda. So now maybe I drink orange soda and my stomach starts hurting subconsciously because you already planted that in my head, right? Yeah. So think about homosexuality, think about sexual identity, think about genders, think about experimenting with sexuality, think about truth and biblical truth, and is the Bible real, and did God create in 7 days, is evolution and creation. You think all these things, and you swipe for a couple minutes on TikTok, and there's 1,000 million experts that are on a topic explaining something. That's kind of a piggyback on yours. That's like, parents, we got to be the ones having those conversations.
Yeah, get there first.
Yeah. I want to be the first person to answer the tough questions that Stella has.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because right now it was, why do elephants have to drink with their nose and not with their mouth?
Yeah.
That's what I got. That's what I got last night in dinner. And I said, I don't know. and then
Yeah.
we Googled it. But that elephant drinking with their nose and not their mouth turns into, hey, this happened in 6th grade, or hey, this kid told me this.
Well, and I think that, you can't be lazy. You have to be willing to like educate yourself so that you have answers to the tough questions. And
Yep.
you can't just hope that it never comes up, or, give a very basic, simple, kind of answer that just, tries to get them to, kind of drop it. Like if they have tough questions, and you need to be able to give them answers that are going to really meet that question. And if you
Yeah.
don't know the answer, then be honest and say, hey, you know what,
Yep.
that's a really good question. I don't know. Let
Yep.
me try to figure that out myself, and then we can talk.
Yeah, that idea of truth and love.
Yeah.
I think you said it earlier. It's not like when they are vulnerable and talk about their struggles, we don't embrace that. I think you said and say like, "Oh, it's okay, buddy. Everyone's doing it." It's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, that's wrong."
Yeah.
Like there's a straight line in the sand that's not biblical.
Yeah.
That's not what Jesus has for you. But here's what Jesus does have for you, and then bring it with love, not just like you're going to hell. I spoke on last Wednesday night and talked about Jesus isn't in the business for behavior modification. It's not about
Mhm.
just being better. And I said God doesn't want good people to be gooder. Like
Yeah.
he wants lost people to be saved. He wants dead people to be found, to be alive. And it's in love that all of those behaviors need to be discussed. Last thing I said, last point or encouragement is that it's kind of a long answer, but basically this generation wants to be a part of something bigger than just going through the motions. And as parents, as leaders, as adults, as coaches, let's help them down
Yeah.
that path rather than shunning it. Like, let's foster that idea that they want to be a part of something bigger, and then
Yeah.
allow that bigger to be advancing the kingdom of God.
Right.
And so that's my biggest challenge to parents is how do you help them do something bigger?
Yeah.
Like if a kid comes to you and says, I want to start a Christian TikTok, cool. Go buy them a tripod, go buy them a ring light. Like let's do everything we can to help foster that idea that they can make a difference in this world, and not continuing to beat that down and wait until they're adults, or like, what can you do with your middle school or high school to help them be a part of something bigger?
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast last week of Pastor Craig Rochelle from Life Church, and he was saying that he was talking about 10 things about how to have longevity and succeed in ministry. And one of them, he was talking about, fostering a love for the church within your family. And he was saying, get your kids serving in the church as early as possible, so that it's not your church, it's their church too. Like get them on mission,
I love
and
that.
get them to see that they're a part of the kingdom of God, and they're a part of the mission of God. And so that they have a purpose even from a really, really young age, and they take ownership in it.
Yep. I love that. That's great. Same thing as parents. I mean, my dad always teaches to encourage parents to not force kids, but give kids chores at an early age. And you do that because then they have buy-in in the family and understand hard work. It's the same thing. They have buy-in at the church. Let's go to a couple comments and then we'll close it out with our final thoughts. Esther says, parents know so much. The first time your child loses his or her innocence, it hurts your mommy heart. Yep. First time they get caught at a party, or first time they do something they shouldn't. I can't imagine what that's going to feel like. I hope I handle it with grace and mercy. Esther talked. This was during your talk about sex trafficking, when she was saying that the Super Bowl is like one of the, I guess, highest statistically times where people get sex trafficked. Jake comes with a great question. Do you know Jake Wooten?
I do know Jake. He's one of my kids.
All right. He says, is going to parties bad, even if you're not doing the bad things that are there? Or is it bad to be surrounding yourselves with bad things like that? If that makes sense. Does make sense, Jake. And that's a great question. Your pastor, Garet, is going to answer that right meow.
You
knock it out first and then I'll answer it. Or you want me to go?
You go first.
All right. Here's what I tell my students. Going to a party where, let's just say, drinking is going to be there and you're not going to drink, I don't think is sinful. Do I think it's a great idea? No. Should you do it? Probably not. There's nothing that's going to be beneficial, number one, in your life by going there. You're going to see some things you shouldn't. You're going to be surrounded by some things you shouldn't. You're going to be tempted. And there's only so many parties you can go to and not drink or not do those things before it slowly starts getting in your head that maybe this would be fun, or maybe it should. Or you go to 4 parties, a month goes by, you have an awful night, your mom gets mad at you, you skip church, Garrett's message made you mad, and on Friday you're like, dude, forget the world, I'm going to the party. Well, now you know the people there, you know what it goes there, you know how to get there, you know how to lie to your parents maybe. So with all that being said, is it wrong? Is it sinful? Probably not, but I've never had anyone say, oh yeah, I went to this party on Friday night and Jesus spoke to me there and my spiritual walk is different. It's just overall probably not the best idea.
Yeah. Jake, me and Tyler both went to parties in high school, and
me? No, I did not.
Tyler's worse than me by far.
Speak for yourself.
And
by a party, if you mean a dodgeball party at the church.
One of the things that was, I can't even say that this is good parenting advice, but like my parents, they knew I was going to parties, and it was almost like because they put trust in me that I didn't participate in the other things that my friends were. Like I could say, hey, I'm going to a party. My parents would be like, okay, hey, make good decisions. And because they were like cool with me going, it like made me want to like do the right thing and make them proud. And in some areas I'm successful, and others not so much. But yeah, I mean, like you know yourself, and whether or not you can really handle that, and whether it's really going to be beneficial to your following Jesus.
Yep.
Here's a real good one, Jake. In college at Evangel, there was a party at Brian Eckwood's house, and everybody went. And Tyler and a few of my other buddies were like, hey, let's go to Eckwood's party. And I tried to get them not to go. Okay, Jake? I was like, hey, I'm staying back here at the dorm. You guys should stay with me. Don't go to the party. Here's what happened, Jake. They all went to the party, and they all got in big trouble. They got caught by the dean of the university. And what happened, Tyler? What about happened?
Well, here's the thing. There's one time in my whole entire life that Garrett gave me great advice, and that night was the only time I should have listened to Garrett. And actually, Chase is watching now, and he was the one that drove me there, so that's on him. Here's the other thing I'd say, Jake. If you struggle with drinking before, I would avoid all parties. If you're like Garrett and maybe never went down that path, you probably could. So I went to parties my freshman, sophomore year, didn't really do anything. Junior, senior year, started drinking, and then college went and drank. And then there was a season where I stopped drinking, and I still wanted to go to the parties to fit in. And I tried, and I fell right back into my old ways. So I had to remove myself for 2 years from any party at all. Yeah. After 2 years, I knew my faith was strong enough. I could go then back to the parties, and I didn't stumble because I knew that there was a moment where Jesus and my relationship with Jesus was more important than doing what the world said for me to do. So I went there and almost had sympathy for people. I went there and said, man, how could you guys keep doing the same thing that we've been doing for 6 years? So it's kind of all where you're at in that path, in that plan, I should say that path with Jesus. Chase, speaking of Chase, the one who drove me to the party, kids don't care what you know until they know you care. I agree. And I would say that is more now than ever. I think kids don't even listen to you until you show up.
Yeah.
And then my lovely mother, not my son at a party. That's right, Mom. Not your son, Stacy Sanchez. Final thoughts? Any of them? Are you all thought it out?
Dude, this is an hour past my bedtime.
That's an actual true story. Any takeaways or closing
I,
arguments?
I think that I would say one more thing to Jake's question. I think that you have to, with youth today who are trying to, decide where's the line or what can they do and what can they not do. I think that you also just need to use a tremendous amount of wisdom and discernment, because even though you might not make bad decisions, somebody around you might make a bad decision that could still impact you. Somebody else's, decision to drink and drive can have consequences on you, even if you don't. And so, it's you really need to use wisdom, and the enemy is out to get you. He'll take you out any way he can. If he can get you to make bad decisions, he will. If he can't get you to, he'll try to use some other way to get you. And so, you really need to use a lot of wisdom and discernment, and you need, I would say, try to find friends that you can do wholesome things with. Try to find a community that you can, do things with it on the weekends that honor God. So that would be probably my last piece of advice.
I love that. I just jotted down a couple things that if I could encourage all parents to do, and it's just 4 things. Number 1, be there. I can't, and we've talked about this before on the podcast on Dads on the Ground and a couple other ones, but be there doesn't mean like, hey son, I'm going to go do some, woodworking in the garage. Why don't you come join me? That's not be there. They're reluctantly coming to be with you. Be there means when they're playing video games, go sit down and be like, hey, what are you playing? What are you doing? If they're into art, you're drawing, get to them on their level. My analogy is like when I play with Stella, if I'm like, hey, bring your Barbies over to the couch, she won't do that. She wants me to go up and sit in front of the Barbie house and play Barbies. So do that with your kids, whatever age they are. Number 2, stole from Garet, or we came in with a like mind, is just ask questions. Every day on the way home from picking Stella up, I ask her, hey, was anyone rude to you? Were you rude to anyone else? Did you try something and fail? Did you try something and succeed? And I ask those 4 questions every single day. And I'm hoping that continues when she's, in 10th grade and 12th grade. So I ask her, were you rude to someone? Was someone rude to you? Did you try something and fail and try something and succeed? Those obviously will change as she gets older. And then the last 2 are listen and bite your tongue. I think parents sometimes try to just pour out all this advice. And sometimes kids just want you to listen without spewing your advice. If I knew I could talk to my parents at some point, or, that's why I push adult leaders so much to ask questions, because there's so many times kids won't talk to their parents because they're fearful of what the parents will say or how they will respond. So sometimes there needs to be a conversation where you're just like, yep, I'm here. And you leave and you go tell your wife, like, dude, you don't understand this question's in the comments. You don't always have to. Sometimes the kids just know. They know the truth that you want to tell them. And the last one, this is my overall point to all parents, and I hope I can be there when I'm a high school kid, is you are their parent. You are not their friend.
That's right.
And the craziest friends I had in high school, their parents were our friends, not our parents. And I mean that with all love and respect to all of my friends in high school's parents, but the parents that were our buddies, we got in a lot of trouble with. And that goes on to the way you respond, the way you ask, the way you question, the way you bring truth and love. A friend at times will not say things that a parent would, and parents, we're not trying to be their best friend. We're trying to guide them in a path that we believe Jesus has for them. So those are my 4: be there, ask, listen, and you're not their friend. You're their parent.
That's right.
Okay. Oh, look who we got here. Seth Bergen.
What?
Yo.
Dude, I thought about Seth like 3 weeks ago. He randomly came to my mind.
He texted me.
What's up, Seth?
One time Preston Chase Fowler threw a chocolate milk on Seth, or Seth threw it on Chase, or something happened. Do you remember that?
I remember.
Is in the back
I can't remember which way it happened, but I remember.
Yeah, most likely Chase threw it on him. Speaking of Chase, this man, Preston Chase Fowler, the man, the myth, and the legend, will be on next week. I'm bringing all my homies on the show. Garet this week. Next week, we're talking about what it means to be a young father with kids. some things that we like that our parents did, and some things that we will not repeat that our parents did, and talking about what that looks like from the parenting side of it. And so that's next week. We're going next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday, I don't know if I don't have anything planned for that show, but we got 2 or 3 before my dad's back, and I'm taking over this show. We're just bringing on random people. If you want to be on the show, drop a comment, let me know. We'll bring you on. And we're going to go every Tuesday for maybe another 3 or 4 weeks to kind of boost up some of our show stuff. So any other thoughts, Garrett?
Nope.
Hey man, it was a pleasure. I'm glad you could stay on for another hour. I did see a comment up here though that I just remembered I passed. Heather said, "Ready for more coffee off the balcony stories."
Tyler's a liar.
And then your wife followed that come up with, "I'm not ready for that." So me and Garrett got in a lot of trouble. We done a lot of stupid things. And it's a lot of those stories will just need to be for a different time. Josh Ruby says, "Bring me on sometime." All right, Josh, you're on the week after that. We got Chase next week, Josh Ruby on the week after that. As always, never forget to renew your perspective, move towards uncertainty, and find what's awesome about that in every situation. And never forget that there's 2 times to be great: when you feel like it and when you don't. We love you, and we'll see you all next week.
I had to realize what's inside of me. For all of the people that lied to me, for all of the people that said I would fall off, oh, boy, what a time to be alive. I wrote this for everyone, feel like they counted out. You need to look in the mirror and tell yourself